225 million faces, scanned in a New Zealand supermarket trial. The regulator approved it. Run the identical trial today, and it fails a completely different test. Not the technology, the date. Every board using facial recognition, fingerprint clocks, or biometric sign-in has had 9 months of runway. That runway closes in days. Could your board produce its proportionality assessment tomorrow?
Let's get into it.
225 million faces scanned in a New Zealand supermarket trial. The regulator approved it. Run the same trial today and it fails. Not because the technology changed, because the date did. This is the Hamberger report. I'm Andreas Hamberger, enterprise architect and AI governance practitioner, Wellington. A stylized face dissolving into a mesh of data points above a boardroom table is the image this episode earns. The New Zealand Biometric Processing Privacy Code has existed since it was issued on the 6th of August 2025. It came into force for new biometric processing on the 3rd of November 2025. What arrives on the 3rd of August 2026 is the end of the 9-month runway for every organization already using the technology before that date. From that Monday, the Code's 13 rules apply in full, and enforcement begins against organizations that have been in breach throughout the transition period. The board question is not what the Code says. It has been published, guided, and explained for 11 months. The sharper, more uncomfortable question: can your board produce the documented proportionality assessment right now, including the Maori cultural impact analysis, if the Privacy Commissioner asks for it on the 4th of August? 3 deadlines, 1 week, 3 different regulators. The Biometric Code deadline does not arrive alone, and most New Zealand boards have not clocked the other 2 obligations landing beside it in the same 5 days. A 3-column infographic naming 3 deadlines in 1 week is the image this episode earns. The Biometric Code deadline sits inside a concentrated compliance wall, 3 board-owned obligations landing 5 days apart in a calendar week when many boards will not be in formal session. On the 29th of July 2026, the Governance of Biometric and Space Infrastructure regime brings a registration obligation with an entity fine of $250,000 for non-registration. On the 2nd of August, the European Union's Artificial Intelligence Act Article 50 transparency obligations become operative for New Zealand organizations with European exposure. On the 3rd of August, the Biometric Code's existing user compliance deadline falls. 3 deadlines, 1 week, 3 different regulators. The Biometric Code has received far less board attention than the health sector breach narrative or the defining powers debate this series has already covered. That is the gap. The deadline is imminent, and the governance work most boards needed to finish before the 3rd of August has either not started or not finished. 225 million faces, scanned across 25 supermarkets over 7 months. The regulator called the trial justified, then wrote every one of its own conditions into law as the new baseline for everyone else. 4 stacked figures beneath a small camera glyph is the image this episode earns. The Foodstuffs North Island trial matters because it is not hypothetical. It ran across 25 supermarkets from roughly February to September 2024. In those 7 months, the system scanned 225,972,004 faces, generating 1,742 alerts, of which 1,208 were confirmed matches. An independent evaluator concluded it had prevented more than 100 cases of serious harm. In June 2025, the Privacy Commissioner found the use was justified by that evidence under the law as it then stood. Read the conditions the Commissioner attached because they are a preview. More accurate testing on the New Zealand population, documented bias measures for Maori and Pacific peoples, stronger transparency at the point of entry, and real watchlist governance. Every one of those conditions is now a rule. This Friday, Lethal by Design continues with the Proving Grounds, Part 8 of the 9-part arc. Different governance failure. Same underlying discipline. The documentation is the obligation, not the intention behind it. Ask a board where its biometric exposure sits. and most point at the cameras. The real exposure is the fingerprint clock on the staff door and the access scanner beside it, and almost nobody is governing either. 2 panels in scope against out of scope is the image this episode earns. The code applies to any organization under the Privacy Act 2020 that collects and uses biometric information through automated processing to identify, verify, or categorize people. That covers facial recognition, fingerprint scanning, voice recognition, and gait analysis, regardless of size or sector. What sits outside it is narrower than most directors assume. Consumer devices used for personal purposes are excluded. A phone's facial sign-in, a fitness tracker, a smartwatch, manual collection without automated processing is excluded. Health information processed by health agencies for clinical purposes falls under a separate code. The boundary that catches people is the healthcare one. A hospital's clinical use of biometrics sits under the Health Information Privacy Code. The same hospital's fingerprint scanner on the staff entry door, used for building access rather than clinical identification, falls under the biometric code instead. The distinction is the purpose, not the setting. A privacy question and a procurement question turn out to be the same question. Where your facial recognition vendor sits, on whose soil your biometric templates are processed, and under whose lawful access regime they end up. A New Zealand server room sending a data template across an ocean to an offshore center is the image this episode earns. The sovereignty question sits one layer beneath the compliance question, and it turns a privacy matter into a procurement one. Facial recognition algorithms are largely built offshore and trained on populations that do not resemble New Zealand's. The United States National Institute of Standards and Technology runs the face recognition vendor test, and its demographic study found false match rates varying by a factor of between 10 and 100 across ethnic groups. For a board, that is not an abstract fairness point. It is a data residency question. Which vendor holds the matching capability, on whose soil the biometric templates are processed, and under whose lawful access regime they sit? A template that leaves New Zealand is an operational dependency. A proportionality assessment has to name, not assume away. Sovereign control of identity infrastructure is not a slogan. It is a line item in the Rule 1 evidence file. New Zealand is not the strictest biometric regime in the room, and it is not the loosest either. For a board with cross-border operations, that middle position is exactly the problem, not a comfort. 5 country rows, graduating from steel blue to amber, is the image this episode earns. New Zealand's code occupies a middle position internationally, and for boards with cross-border operations, the comparison is not academic, because foreign obligations stack on top of the code rather than replacing it. The European Union is materially stricter. Its Artificial Intelligence Act prohibits real-time remote biometric identification in public spaces for law enforcement purposes, except in 3 narrow, judicially authorized cases, and bans inferring ethnicity or political opinion from biometrics. New Zealand regulates retail facial recognition rather than banning it, but prohibits inferring emotion and ethnicity across every use. Australia has no standalone biometric code yet. The United Kingdom requires proportionality and documentation broadly comparable to ours, with penalties reaching £17.5 million. The United States has no federal biometric law at all. On the public facts available, New Zealand's code currently reads as the more demanding instrument in its immediate region. A New Zealand retailer with Australian stores answers to both regimes. Cumulative, not either or. 13 rules. 3 of them cannot be produced overnight. And a complaint that lands on the 4th of August cannot be answered by starting the documentation on the 5th. The runway closes once, not gradually. 3 connected cards naming the rules boards most often miss is the image this episode earns. The code contains 13 rules. 3 of them cannot be produced overnight. Rule 1, proportionality. A documented assessment showing lawful purpose, no less invasive alternative, and a genuine Maori cultural impact analysis. That work takes weeks, not days. Rule 3, transparency. A working non-biometric alternative genuinely available in operation, not written into a policy and forgotten. Rule 10, retention. Biometric information deleted once its purpose is achieved, with active review, not an unchecked watch list growing through the transition period. None of this is retrievable retroactively. A complaint that lands on the 4th of August cannot be answered by starting the assessment on the 5th. So the exercise for your next board meeting is not a briefing on the technology. Your people already know the systems exist. The exercise is to answer one question with evidence, not assurance. If the Privacy Commissioner asked for your documented proportionality assessment tomorrow, what would you actually hand over? And how long ago was it written?
That is the Hamberger report for today. If this was useful, subscribe and hit the like button. It helps more professionals find the channel. You will find links to everything we covered in the description below. I am Andreas Hamberger, and I will see you tomorrow.
Like and subscribe.